Brian Shaw is going for his 5th World's Strongest Man title. He last won the title back in 2016,
yes.
And we've had different winners every year since then. But as well as going for the 5th title, if Brian can manage to win it this year, he'll be the oldest athlete ever to win the World's Strongest Man. Liz, who's the previous oldest winner right now?
So the current oldest winner of World's Strongest Man is Zydrunas Savickas, who won it in 2014, aged 38 years and 8 months. If Brian wins this year, he'll be 39 years and 4 months.
The lady with the stats. Now, over the last few years, I felt that Brian, he was still a great strongman, but he just sort of lacked that killer instinct that I remember seeing in Brian in the early years, where he was prime Brian Shaw, winning major titles, winning the Arnolds, winning World's Strongest Man. You know, every single comp he went to, he was hungry. And this last year, I've started to see that fire in him again. I don't know what it is, you know. When you know someone well and you've competed... my first World's Strongest Man was against Brian Shaw. We're in the same group back in 2008, I believe, in West Virginia.
It was his first Worlds too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was both of our first Worlds. I think he came 3rd in the group and I came 4th. Mm-hmm. Great to kind of have some battles with him. Even from then, you know, over the years, we've competed all over the world together. And Brian is one of the most determined men you'll ever meet. If he wants to do something, he's kind of got his mindset on it and he'll do it. But over the last few years, I felt he's kind of been distracted by other things going on. So businesses, he's got a family, he's got, you know, loads of other things that he focuses on his YouTube. And he's lost that. When you're younger, all you think about is winning. You know, that was all that mattered to him. But this last year, especially when I saw him do the Shaw Classic, it seemed to reignite something inside. And I genuinely believe he is going to be one of the top contenders to win this year. We did a video last year saying, should we just hand Brian the title? And I just really didn't see Brian winning last year.
No, I didn't either. You predicted he would come 5th, and he did.
Yeah.
And you got quite a lot of shit for predicting he would come 5th from his fans. So
I did. And, you know, it is just, you know, it's a bit of a hunch. It's an understanding of how I work myself as an athlete, how things have differed as I've got older and you get injuries. But I honestly believe Brian looks focused this year. He looks like a man. I mean, he's trimmed down. He's looking in great shape. But you watch his videos, and not just videos, but I've been talking to him a little bit as well. And he just seems to have the right mindset. Now, I'm not saying he's going to go and win, but I believe with the events that are in this competition, in the heats and the final, he has his best chance of getting that 5th title. If he doesn't do it this year, it's probably going to get harder and harder.
I think it's kind of now or never, to be honest.
I totally agree. I think with the potential return next year of Lissis and Kiliashkovsky, other younger guys that are just getting better all the time, you can't keep fighting time. You know, we've got some great athletes at World's Strongest Man that are of an older generation, if you like, but they're not challenging for
winning,
titles.
no.
Brian is the oldest athlete there that I feel, you know,
that's a genuine shot.
No, maybe not. Actually, not the oldest. There's a couple of guys late 30s now that are, you know, great contenders. Even early 40s, we seem to be getting athletes that are able to keep that level up for a bit longer. But when you've been as successful as someone like Brian, and you see it with Zydrunas, and you see it in all other sports, you know, when you've been one of the best of all time, you tend to lose that hunger.
It must be really hard, though, for someone like Brian, who wants his legacy to be probably most title wins, or at least to equal Mariusz's 5 titles. It must be really difficult because you don't want to keep going and for people to see your decline, but also if you've got to be in it to win it. So,
well, he's proven he's still one of the best strongmen. You know, we kind of criticise Brian for coming 5th. When someone has been put on that pedestal,
I think it's just everyone has high expectations.
Of course,
because of what
you know,
he's done.
no one says anything when Mark Felix doesn't make the final.
No,
but Mark's still going at 55 years old. If I turned up, no one's going to say too much if I don't make the final. But when you are Zydrunas or Brian Shaw, who are regarded as, in my opinion, the best 2 strongmen of all time, I put them way above Eddie and Thor. As good as those guys were, one World's Strongest Man title is not enough to put you into that kind of level. The longevity that these 2 men have had is so impressive. So if Brian can win 5 years after his last victory, become the oldest winner, become a 5-time champion, does Brian then deserve to be the greatest of all time?
It would be hard. It would be hard to argue against, but then you have to, I mean, just go on Zydrunas' Wikipedia. You'll be scrolling for half an hour past all of the first places. Zydrunas competed a hell of a lot more than Brian. Brian was a lot more selective, which makes what Zydrunas did so impressive to me, to compete week in, week out. When the hell was he even training? It's shocking, really, isn't it? That
it is.
He was able to sort of do that for as long as he did.
I think if Brian can win this, if people kind of don't believe he's got a chance, let's look at the events in the final to start with.
Let's.
So the first event is the medley.
Yeah.
So we've got a yoke into a frame carry, I believe. Very steady events. Brian, notoriously extremely good at those events when they're extremely heavy. But he performs well consistently.
You know what Brian needs to do this year is let his hair down a little bit and
He's got
just
to stop
really
worrying.
go for it. Stop overthinking.
I remember going against Brian in a yoke back in Sweden. This was a super series many years ago.
Yeah.
And you had to go there and back. Obviously, you had to do a turn. So you put the yoke down, turn, and come back. Me and Brian were head to head there. He moves really quickly. Where I beat him was I just didn't mess around with the turn. I was a very quick turn straight up. He sometimes overanalyzes where he needs to put his hands, his back positioning. I think Brian just needs to attack it, especially when it's a bit lighter like this. It's not the 600 kilo yokes that you have at the Arnolds and stuff like that. He's such a big frame. He can just get under there, transition quickly. He'll be straight off. If he does that, he's going to place well on that type of event. You got the turntable, which is
Titans turntable.
The Titans turntable.
Yeah, that looks exciting.
It does. He's always been a great truck puller.
Yeah.
I think this type of event, if his fitness is up, which it seems to be, he's going to be scoring big points.
And he's still got the body weight as well, hasn't he? The advantage going into that sort of event.
Now, we saw last year that his deadlift isn't what it used to be, but he's still scoring decent points on a deadlift. I can't see him being any worse than mid-table. And if he's got himself in really good shape, he could be pushing for top 3 on a deadlift. The events where he really excels, the weight for height.
Yeah.
The keg for height, I really don't see him placing outside the top 2.
No,
I think maybe Tom Stoltman could push him. No one else. I mean, I've been in the yard where you're sort of practicing the throwing, and all these guys are big, strong guys, really good at throwing events. We can all throw, decent weights pretty high. Brian can launch them. Honestly, we did. We were in Malta one year, and the kind of practice yard for the keg was kind of like on a cliff. There was like this cliff with a car park at the top of it, but way higher than the bar. No one was getting close. Brian launched one up onto the car park.
Oh, really?
And no one else even got kind of close to that kind of level. It was it was just comical. You had to kind of be there, but he just has ridiculous power when it comes to that type of event. And because they're allowed more than one attempt, I really think he can have that precision and take his time. It's not like when it's a sprint and you've just got to try and go for it. He can take his time, he can be meticulous, and that is going to suit Brian, down to the ground. The Atlas Stones, again, last year wasn't the best performance by him on the Stones, but I've always said Stones comes down to what position you're in the competition. I've done competitions myself where I'm out of that contention for the title, I do pretty badly. I've had other performances where I'm in contention and I'll go there and smash the Stones. And Brian, being as good as he is, I think if he's in contention to win the competition, the worst he could possibly do would be like 3rd, and potentially could be a win for him.
Max
log is actually, again, a better event for him than last year his log was weird.
Yeah,
it was very, very odd. Brian's a 200 plus kilo log lifter, and he just didn't perform. It was odd. I don't know what was up with Brian at Worlds last year, but it wasn't the Brian.
His transitions were a bit funny, weren't they?
Brian on a log for max, depending on who gets into the final, is going to be an interesting one.
And this is the thing as well. Like, when you look at how the groups are spread out and who's in which group and who they're up against, we'll be lucky to see 1 or 2 of the biggest log lifters into the final. We may not see any of them in there.
This is, we saw that last year. None of the big major log pressers made it to the final. I mean, Hicksy did, but he got injured. So And this is the thing with Worlds. You could have these great athletes in the heats that just don't make the final. So you need to have that consistency. And I believe Brian has the ability and consistency across any event to score well, no matter who's in the competition. So I think he's going to be a big heavy favourite for this year's contest. I'm not saying I'm picking Brian to win. I'm saying he's going to be there with a legitimate chance. I do believe he's going to be top 3. I'm going to have him in my, regardless of seeing who makes the final, I will put Brian in the top 3 before we even get to
he's going to make the final then?
I'm very confident he makes the final.
A lot of people don't agree with you.
A lot of people don't have the knowledge I have of Strongman.
Oh, look, he's getting cocky now.
11 times I've competed at this competition.
Right, okay. To be fair,
10 times in a row, Brian has won his group at World's Strongest Man. There's always a chance something goes wrong. People can make mistakes, injuries can happen, but nobody wants to see that.
No, of course not.
And I feel Brian focused, he wins his group.
Yeah.
Worst case, he's into a stone off. He wins the stone off.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen anything that suggests Brian wouldn't come at least 3rd in the group. I just can't imagine a scenario where he comes 4th in the group.
I think Brian's looking a lot better than last year. Last year he was 5th at World's Strongest Man.
Yeah.
So, if we were talking about other guys that came 5th last year and they suddenly look better in training this year, we'd be kind of bigging them up. Yeah. It's just because he's such a great strongman. He's arguably the best of all time. We put these people on a pedestal, but I really do believe we could end up seeing the oldest man to win World's Strongest Man. The title right now is currently with Zydrunas. Will we see a 39-year-old take the title?
I don't know. Zydrunas doesn't give those records up easily, does he?
Zydrunas needs to come back and take it if someone gets it. I mean,
he seems to have that spark back more than anything. I think that's what holds Brian back sometimes, is that, to be the best, strongman has to be your world, doesn't it? It has to be everything. But that's not his world now. His family's his world, his businesses as well. And strongman sort of fits around that.
I think he's got into such a good place now where all of those are functioning really well. It doesn't need as much of his attention.
A fully functioning family.
No. I'm talking about the businesses and stuff like that.
Thanks to Kerry, I'm sure.
But what I'm saying is, when you're setting up these things, there's so much work that goes into it. Now they're just running, efficiently. He doesn't have to put that I'm sure he still does. But he looks very focused in his training. He's been able to really commit to that training. He looks great. He looks strong. I think he's going to be a legitimate contender for the title. While you're here, guys, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my awesome strength content.